Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Big Show and to another week. It is Monday when I'm posting this show. This is the Monday show, the 8th of January, and I'm very happy to have you joining me today. Two guests today. I've got Maura Quint for Maura Mondays, and first, Harry Dunn, former Capitol Police officer, just resigned because now he's running for Congress in Maryland's 3rd District. So I caught up with him briefly, and then you can hear my conversation with Maura Quint. Maura Mondays, a very personal therapy-like conversation between Maura and I about dealing with life, I guess, is the shortest way of saying it. I think you'll like it if you like that type of a conversation. Harry Dunn and I start at 29 minutes in, and Maura and I begin right after that at 39 minutes in. I hope you had a good weekend. I've got headlines and lots of sound for you. Lots happening in the news. I had a great weekend. I appeared on both News Nation with Dan Abrams and then on Stephanie Rule's show, The 11th Hour, on Friday night. The NBC show replays on Saturday and Sunday. I hope that you caught it. A lot of fun. Also, spent a lot of time in my garage cleaning it, which I absolutely love doing. I like cleaning up after myself. I like cleaning out spaces and minimizing messes. Declutters my brain and my life. I feel strong going into this week. The State of my Union is strong. I plan to produce a lot of interviews for the week and have a couple great guests who have not been on before, including Josh Green, who's a New York Times best-selling author. He's got a new book out. He's a political journalist. His new book is called The Rebels: Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, The Struggle for a New American Politics. Josh is a really great writer, and I'm looking forward to interviewing him for the first time. I'm also scheduled to talk to this big deal of a guy named Jerry Colonna. He is a really big deal in a couple of different fields, from finance to executive coaching, and he's written a couple of really great books. I heard him on my favorite show, Dan Harris, 10% Happier, and so I'm looking forward to talking with Jerry Colonna about his new book for the first time. So just a couple of the guests I'm planning to talk to this week. You never know how it's going to work out. Sometimes people cancel. I try to get these interviews taped and up on the day I do them, or day after I do them, generally speaking, and so they're on the books. We'll see if they happen. If not, I'll get somebody smart to talk to me each and every day. That's what I do here, along with this news segment, which let's get started with right now. First, we go to headlines, then we go to sound, then the interview. That's the general format of the show. Thank you for joining me, learning with me, enlightening me, making me better, helping me connect you with each other. I hope to see you at the Hangout. I'll be hosting for paid subscribers this Thursday night, as I do almost every Thursday at 8 p.m. East. If you're not a subscriber, sign up now, patreon.com/PeteDominic, and thank you very much to a couple of new subscribers that have come in over the past few days. Welcome, everybody. Hope to see you at the Hangout on Thursday night, and hope to meet you in person March 22nd, 23rd in Las Vegas. Buy your flights, get your hotels. There will be tickets to our event. There will be comedy and podcasting and Jon Carroll's music and so much more. So many listeners, longtime stand-up subscribers and friends, cohorts and comrades, partners in trying to make the world a better place for each other, already have told me that they're going to be out there. The whole thing being produced by Cassie, who is a longtime listener, very generous subscriber to this program. I hope to see you there, and I'm glad to have you here. Time for your headlines from over the weekend. Of course, on Friday, President Biden made a very important speech, his first major campaign event for his re-election bid. The New York Times said he used dire language in a speech to repeatedly condemn Donald Trump, his likely opponent. He warned that the former president would seek to undo democracy if he returns to power. President Biden, struggling with low approval ratings, framed the 2024 election as a choice between a candidate devoted to upholding American ideals and a chaos agent willing to discard them for his personal benefit. The 31-minute speech was by far his most forceful denunciation of Trump since it became evident that the two men were likely to face off again in 2024. The Supreme Court announced it would decide whether Donald Trump would be eligible for Colorado's primary ballot. The court will hear the case in February. The New York Attorney General, Letitia James, asked a judge to make the former president pay roughly $370 million in his New York civil fraud trial. The job numbers are out because it's the first Friday of the month, and in December, U.S. employers look to have added 216,000 jobs, far surpassing the expectations of economists yet again. Also Friday, longtime NRA leader and vampire Wayne LaPierre resigned, facing trial for his corruption allegations. The man who helped transform gun culture and terrify two generations of Americans that their home would be invaded, so they needed to have an arsenal, told the NRA's board that he would resign at the end of the month. Really important, fascinating what is happening to that organization, but you can thank activists for going after that guy for years for this very important and positive development, ending the reign of a man who has an ocean of blood on his hands. All right, what else do I have for you? One of the big stories over the weekend. Congressional leaders have actually gotten something done. They finally reached an agreement on the overall price tag of the next batch of government spending bills. Lawmakers announced on Sunday a major step toward averting a partial shutdown that was set to begin later this month. The deal would set up top-line spending for fiscal year 2024. The amount originally agreed to by President Joe Biden, then House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, was $1.59 trillion in the budget. Negotiations over the government's debt limit last year got them there. The framework proposes keeping in place. Well, you don't give a shit about all the details, but if you do, go and read about this. It's a big deal. Also, over the weekend, Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, and Ron DeSantis fanned out across Iowa ahead of the caucuses. And Donald Trump, in a speech in Iowa, played some of the audio. Trigger alert, it's coming up after the headlines. He referred to those that are serving sentences in connection with the Capitol attack on January 6th as hostages. And then Elise Stefanik, who is auditioning to be his vice president, it seems, also said that to Kirsten Welker on NBC. Unfortunately, she didn't push back on that one part. He said other terrible things, too. I'll play that in a minute. Let me just get a couple more headlines. You hear about this airplane, the Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX flight, where a hole ripped out of the side of it mid-flight? A nightmare on Friday. Years of problems with that airplane. It has been grounded, all of the models, apparently, for a couple more days so they can look into what this issue is. In Ukraine, they said a barrage of Russian missiles had killed at least 11 people near the eastern front line. In the Israel-Hamas war, Israel said it had dismantled Hamas's military abilities in northern Gaza. The Lebanese militia, Hezbollah, now firing rockets towards small Israeli military base in northern Israel, what is said to be a response to the assassination of the senior Hamas leader in their country in Beirut. Apparently, under airstrikes, New York Times reporting Gazans have been forced to forego funeral traditions, instead interring their dead hurriedly and without ceremony, which is just a tragic and horrible situation for Muslim people and their funeral traditions. Other than that, coming up this week, large strikes by transportation workers are expected to cripple the London Underground. That happens more in Europe than anywhere else, I think, for several days this week. Congress is returning to Capitol Hill to resume negotiations on aid for Ukraine and stricter immigration policy, potentially. President Trump's lawyers this week are expected to argue in an appeals court tomorrow that he is immune from prosecution for seeking to overturn the 2020 election. They will fail, I think everybody's saying, that knows anything about this. Hunter Biden is scheduled to appear in a California court Thursday over tax charges. And this week, Taiwan will hold their presidential elections on Saturday. Those are your headlines. Now I've got sound clips for you. It's the audio portion of this non-award winning, but should be, if ever submitted for any, a Golden Globe or something, news segment awards. The Newsies. What daily podcast gives you more information in about 20 minutes than I do? Now, hey, if you listen to double speed or speed and a half, it's like 10 or 15. So let's get after that sound, shall we? The 3-year anniversary, of course, January 6th, took place over the weekend, and I've been taking in all kinds of media information around that, so I want to open with some clips related to it, starting with reporting from NBC News, Ryan Riley, on yet more arrests. 3 January 6 suspects, 3 years later, were arrested at this weird ranch in Florida on Saturday, according to the FBI, including one who had been sought ever since the 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, and 2 who never showed up for trial. Here's the reporting from NBC News.
So on this anniversary as well, Ryan, we also have this news now that the FBI captured 3 fugitives in Florida who were accused of participating in the January 6th attack. What do we know about them?
That's right. So the man on your left there is actually an individual who fled immediately in 2021 when these other individuals were arrested. So originally there were 5 people arrested. He flees. He goes on the lam. No one knows where he is. His sister, you see on the right hand of the screen there, was also was arrested that day, along with the individual in the middle there who actually worked at the family's gun shop in Florida. And then this morning, the FBI finally found them because the 2 individuals on the right had skipped out on their trial, which was set to take place over the summer, and apparently had joined up with the brother here, and they were all at this ranch in Florida where the FBI arrested them early this morning on the 3-year anniversary of January 6th, Jasmine.
You got him. By the way, the Department of Justice put out a stat sheet about what has happened, what they've done, and the damage that's been done. Their investigations, 36 months since the January 6th attacks, 1,265 defendants have been charged in nearly all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Approximately 140 police officers were assaulted, including about 80 from the U.S. Capitol Police and 60 from the Metropolitan Police Department. But, of course, President Trump doesn't refer to them as criminals or insurrectionists or defendants or anything else. He calls them now hostages, as he did in Iowa over the weekend. Trigger alert, this is actual former disgraced, 4 times indicted, twice impeached, 45th president of the United States of America, calling people who were arrested for attacking police officers and the United States Capitol hostages.
By the way, I think J6 had an equal amount of people. It's the biggest crowd I believe I ever spoke to. You never hear about that, do you? You have the hostages, the J6 hostages, I call them. Nobody's been treated ever in history so badly as those people.
Nobody has been treated ever as badly as the insurrectionists on January 6th. Hard to believe anybody could summon the audacity to say such a hyperbolic, extreme thing about these people who we saw commit this crime. But that's what he does. He just says it's the worst ever. It's always the very worst, him and his people. And we've heard it for years and years now, but never ceases to amaze and surprise you that he actually still says it. Because very few people, I think, really do that. Because most of us would be like, come on, man, settle down. Really? The worst? It's a sunburn. I think you're going to survive. And speaking of survivor, Elise Stefanik is a Republican congresswoman from upstate New York, way up in the Adirondacks up there near Lake George is where she is representative. She's become more and more extreme over the past few years, along with Trump, whose train she attached herself to early and tightly and has not gotten off in a long time, except for what she said right after January 6th, when she and other Republican leaders were critical or blamed Donald Trump for the insurrection on January 6th. I put together a whole bunch of Republican leaders and influential Republican congressmen and what they said just after January 6th. The leader of the Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell.
Trump's actions preceded the riot were a disgraceful dereliction of duty.
Former Republican House leader and total loser, Kevin McCarthy.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters.
3 days later, he was at Mar-a-Lago, apparently spoon-feeding the sad president. Here's Ted Cruz on January 7th, the day after.
The president's language and rhetoric often goes too far. I think yesterday in particular, the president's language and rhetoric crossed a line, and it was reckless.
Of course, now Ted Cruz is full-throated supporter of Donald Trump, and so is Republican Senator, some people called moderate. This is Rob Portman shortly after January 6th.
What the president did on January 6th, to me, is inexcusable. He shouldn't have done it.
Of course, Senator Lindsey Graham is like a human windsock. He wakes up in the morning, walks outside, and goes whichever way the wind is blowing because he's an empty barrel as well.
When it comes to accountability, the president needs to understand that his actions were the problem, not the solution.
But they've all reversed their ways, and no one worse than Elise Stefanik, who really wants to be Trump's vice president. Here she is using Trump's language of hostages about the January 6th insurrectionists.
To this key question, do you still think it was a tragic day? Do you think that the people who stormed the Capitol should be held responsible to the full extent of the law?
I have concerns about the treatment of January 6 hostages. I have concerns. We have a role in Congress of oversight over our treatments of prisoners. And I believe that we're seeing the weaponization of the federal government against not just President Trump, but we're seeing it against conservatives. We're seeing it against Catholics. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to serve on the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Government, because the American people want answers. They want transparency, and they understand that as you look across this country, there seems to be two sets of rules. If your last name is Clinton or it's Biden, you get to live by a different set of rules than if you're an everyday patriotic American.
Okay, that's just insane, especially since the Department of Justice has indicted Joe Biden's son Hunter twice, and he's looking at prison time and maybe a lot of prison time. So just preposterous and enraging. But let's stay with MSNBC. Here's Jen Psaki. She's talking to Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin, who somehow his cancer treatment, of course, seems to have worked, which is amazing. But he lost his hair, and now it looks even better. Guy looks amazing and certainly sounds, as always, very effective in pushing back on the danger of the rhetoric of hostages and the rest.
It's so important, in my view, to call out the craziness, even when we feel numb to it at times. And when you hear Trump call the insurrectionists hostages, as he's repeatedly done this weekend, going as far as to say President Biden should release them. You were in the Capitol that day. You've spent the last few years working on this. How dangerous is this rhetoric? And what can be done, in your view, to counter these attempts to kind of rewrite history of that day?
Well, obviously, it's a major insult and affront to the families of actual hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza right now. But look, something struck me yesterday. It was sort of the dog that didn't bark. The Republicans released hundreds and hundreds of hours of TV security tape from January 6th. They've had months to examine it. They have not come up with a single shot which purports to capture an Antifa fighter or an FBI agent inciting the insurrection. Nothing. And yet they're still out there spreading their propaganda and disinformation about how it was really Antifa and FBI agents, which of course would make it strange to argue that all these people should be released and Trump's going to pardon them. Why would he want to pardon all these Antifa fighters? So there's no logic in their presentation. It really is characteristic of what you get from authoritarian and fascist political parties.
All right. Well, there you go. Well done, as always, by Jamie Raskin. And quickly back to Iowa, where the former, now disgraced president also had this to say about John McCain. And it's real ugly.
Obamacare is a catastrophe. Nobody talks about it. You know, without John McCain, we would have had it done. But John McCain, for some reason, couldn't get his arm up that day. Remember? He goes that like...
That's right. He made fun of John McCain, who had his arms repeatedly dislocated at the shoulder by his North Vietnamese captors as part of rope torture. The dude was physically unable to raise his arms above shoulder level as a result of his injuries there. And how anyone can admire Donald Trump after he says things like that in any way is still where so many of us struggle. But they do. This disgusting, horrible, reprehensible man. Meghan McCain responded on Twitter, by the way. She said, "My dad was an American hero, an icon, a patriot that will be remembered throughout history. I cannot buy a bagel without someone approaching me about how much they loved and miss him. Trump is a piece of shit. Election-denying huckster whose own wife won't campaign with him." That's what she had to say about that clip that she also shared. She quoted it. And my friend Lori Kilmartin, who's a comedian and always very funny, said, by the way, on Twitter, she wrote, 100% Meghan McCain would be a Trumper if Trump said nice things about her dad. Hard to see it any other way, but still reprehensible. And that wasn't it for the outrageous comments. President Trump also was speaking in Iowa just days after that shooting at a school in Perry, Iowa. And he said, you know, we're going to have to get over it. And people were outraged, including me, when I heard that. But here's that clip in case you haven't heard it.
Deepest sympathies to the victims and families touched by the terrible school shooting yesterday in Perry, Iowa. To the entire community, we love you, we pray for you, and we ask God to heal and comfort really the whole state and the pain that you have. This is something that's very unique to your state. We're really with you as much as anybody can be. It's a very terrible thing that happened, and it's just horrible to see that happening. That's just horrible. So surprising to see it here. But we have to get over it. We have to move forward. But to the relatives and to all of the people that are so devastated right now, to a point they can't breathe, they can't live, we are with you all the way.
All right, so a lot of people thought that was reprehensible, and I was one of them. And I tweeted about that, by the way, and this is the new Twitter, X, I guess, but I'm not proud to say it is probably the most popular thing I've ever tweeted. I probably just, I don't want to say got lucky, because I don't love it as a kind of a violent tweet, but I just said if my kid was killed in a school shooting and someone told me you just have to get over it, I'd rip your esophagus out through your neck, just saying. I mean, I don't like that something I said about violence is that popular, but I think I channel a lot of people's passions that if someone said to get over it, I mean, who says get over it? Even if someone died of natural causes, it's not something you say right after it happened. It's something you say like 20 years later where you're still just broken about it. And even then it's insensitive. And that's being kind. So, all right. Well, now I just want to share with you a clip from my appearance on News Nation over the weekend. Tomorrow, maybe I'll share something from my appearance on MSNBC. But this is probably the most combative I've gotten in a while on television. But I was up against this woman, Scotty Nell Hughes, who I've known for years. But she's a Trump supporter or not. It's not quite clear, but we were asked by the host, Dan Abrams, also on the panel was former CNN Washington Post Chris Cillizza, about Epstein and Trump. And of course, in Dan Abrams' style, he had to make it a binary, like, because Clinton's name was on it. It was like Clinton versus Trump. And of course, it's a ridiculous framing, as I said, because only one of them is running for president, is the most popular person in the Republican Party. So it makes zero sense to really think or care about Bill Clinton, who we all know has always been a creep and no one supports. Anyway, this is about 6 minutes if you want to skip it and jump into my conversation with Harry Dunn. You can, and then Maura Quint, but I think I really pinned her in a corner rhetorically, and there was really no way out. I made the case against Donald Trump on national television, and it felt pretty good to say these things, frankly.
They both knew Jeffrey Epstein, seems like pretty well. You know, does that matter? Should it matter? Back with former Trump campaign surrogate Scotty Nell Hughes, former CNN editor-at-large Chris Cillizza, and comedian Pete Dominick. You know, Scotty, depending on which side of the aisle you're on, right, the left all focuses a lot on Donald Trump. The right, I mean, Fox News constantly 50 mentions of Bill Clinton, this and this. I mean, but you know, it does seem to me that it does kind of matter, right? This guy was a particular kind of pervert, right, and a particularly a criminal. And, you know, these guys were hanging out with him. Should that matter?
Oh, absolutely, it should matter. But first of all, Jeffrey Epstein should not be politicized. I absolutely hate that they've made this a political issue, because I don't think we're ever going to get the full transparency to what the world of Jeffrey Epstein is. But it does matter. From Trump's perspective, this kind of vindicated him, because it showed that he never... Oh, absolutely. It showed that... And now, granted, these were just emails. Let's call what these actually were. So they're not necessarily the hard flight logs. They aren't who visited the island. But this kind of showed that Donald Trump was never involved in the trafficking ring. Bill Clinton can't say so much. Neither can the court cases against him. He was involved. But here's the thing.
But I don't want to politicize.
But I don't want to politicize it. But I will say this. Here's what's making me really upset about this. I feel like this is a slow trickle out. I think they're trying to wait for all of the predators to die, or at least get so old that nobody cares about them. Hence why this is continuing just to be a week after week, year after year, and we're still not getting the full truth of what involved in his world.
Well, because one of the predators that Scotty's talking about is Donald Trump, and he's running for president. He is a predator. He is a terrible man. And I think you say we shouldn't politicize it. I'll say it differently. It doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter what your political ideology are. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative, a lot of men do terrible things, and we should all be able to call them out. And there's been a movement doing just that, which has been fairly effective, and we can speak to it. But Donald Trump has always been terrible to women. He cheated on all of his wives.
But we're talking about this specific case. Stick to the subject.
No,
I know you've got Trump derangement syndrome.
Trump derangement syndrome
subject with Jeffrey Epstein
is the laziest, hackiest insinuation. I absolutely do.
But it's the truth.
But the difference is I'm concerned. My derangement is I'm concerned that he could be the leader again. Your derangement is that you're part of a cult that believes that he isn't a sexual predator. You don't believe that Donald Trump is a sexual predator. He was accused of it.
You do not know what I believe or not.
Guilty. Well, tell me that.
You can't say.
Do you believe it or not?
I absolutely do not agree with some of the issues that he's had with women.
Jon Carroll was found by a jury of his peers in a civil court. Do you believe that or not? Not to mention the other 20 women. Not to mention the fact that he cheated on all of his wives. Not to mention that if you knew anything about Donald Trump
right now, which is Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go back.
No, answer my question.
No, you answer mine. You answer Dan. He is the host of the show.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Trump's relationship with Epstein compared to Bill Clinton's? They're definitely different.
Bill Clinton is a creep.
One at a time.
Bill Clinton is a creep. He's not running for president. Donald Trump, we should all be reminded. The question is this. I'll answer the question. Does it mean politics? Does it insinuate? Yes. He was friends with Epstein. He is a sexual predator like Epstein. He is running for president. Do you believe Donald Trump's a sexual predator, yes or no?
When you say Epstein,
okay.
I mean, that gets a little, I mean, you actually compare Trump to Epstein?
Absolutely.
Really?
And that right there discounts everything he says from here on out. You can't look at this
women specifically. I don't think the same accusation. But yes, I'll lump all these horrible men who have been credibly accused and found guilty. Donald Trump admitted that he sexually assaults women. Yes, I'll lump them in. And they were friends. They hung out.
Well, that's the question. Is the hanging out? But there is also the Bill Clinton, right?
Who cares about Bill Clinton?
Well, the Democratic Party does.
He's not. Nobody in the Democratic. Chris, does anybody in the Democratic Party care about Bill Clinton
I love that. Okay, I get to be the new arbiter.
About to potentially
you get to be
a presidential candidate.
I don't think Donald Trump and Bill Clinton are the same thing. I think it does matter that one of them is currently, in my mind, going to be the Republican nominee for president in 2024, and the other one is out of politics. Out of politics and never
except for his wife.
Well, but the interesting thing is Clinton probably had more contacts with Jeffrey Epstein than Donald
I think
Trump,
that's right.
Right. And yet he is less relevant because he's not running for president.
Clinton has been incredibly accused by dozens of women the way Donald Trump has. A few.
He's
credibly. Once again, in this case, we're talking about a pedophile sex trafficking ring.
But to your point, though, Pete, like, if we're going to say cheating on your wife or
all of your wives.
Okay, but I'm just saying. So let's just say cheating on your wife, behaving poorly toward women, and poorly, I know, is covering a lot of ground here, but let's just call it behaving poorly. If that is bad, then I don't think that there are gradations that, like, I think there's a bigger difference between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump than there is between Donald Trump and Bill Clinton.
One's dead and one's running for president.
If you didn't know, are there credible allegations that Donald Trump is a pedophile?
Has there been any?
I don't think
there is not.
But Jeffrey Epstein,
I'm not saying I didn't call him a pedophile. I said he sexualized his own daughter, which is weird. If you didn't know that Donald Trump was a terrible person in 2004,
no, I'm not.
You weren't paying attention.
So I would look. I'm not disputing. In my mind, Donald Trump is an active threat to democracy. Period. Okay. At the same time, I do think it is dangerous to say that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein are the same. Donald Trump has behaved incredibly poorly toward women. It's been documented. Yeah. He had 20-plus sexual assault allegations against him in the lead up to the 2020 election.
No two criminals are the same. I didn't say that. No true criminals are the same.
And the fact that you're underplaying trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking.
Not underplaying.
Yes, you are. 6.3 million just in 2023.
Jeffrey Epstein did not traffic 6.3 million.
No, but that is what the number right now of the trafficking problem we have
Donald
globally
Trump
right now.
and Jeffrey Epstein aren't the same. They are both horrible men who have treated women their entire lives terribly.
Okay, I think it's all self-evident in terms of the...
Well, all right. There you go, Dan. You asked for it. You got it. If you're going to put me on that show, on that segment, to talk about that man and what he has done and been to and about and near and for, really, against women, I'm gonna lay it out there for you. So hopefully you like that, and I would love to hear from you if something I missed or a case I could have made it better, or if the conversation shouldn't be being had at all, at least the way it was framed. There was more to that panel, of course, and maybe I'll play some more clips tomorrow, MSNBC perhaps. But now it's time to get to my first guest. I got two guests on today's show. How about that? Maura Quint joins me, coming up with a very personal conversation, which I think people will enjoy, get a lot out of, and relate to. And then, but first, I caught up with Harry Dunn, the former Capitol police officer who, of course, faced the insurrectionists on January 6th. He testified in front of a congressional committee. He wrote a book, a memoir about his life and his time as a Capitol police officer and on January 6th. And on Friday, he announced that he would be running for Congress in Maryland's 3rd District. He had called me up, actually Thursday, to tell me that privately, so I'd already known, and I broke the news privately to those subscribers. Just another benefit of being a subscriber at the Thursday night Hangout, and I'm going to try to get Harry to join us during the Hangout so he can take questions and maybe we can raise a little bit of money for his campaign. I caught up with Harry for about 10 minutes, and he was driving home from a long day of already appearing on television and radio and everywhere else and campaigning the very first couple days. Ladies and gentlemen, our good friend, my good friend, Harry Dunn, right here on Stand Up.
What's up, brother?
May I speak with the next congressman from Maryland's 3rd District, Harry Dunn, please?
Hey, speaking, man. Speaking. How are you?
I'm good. I'm recording.
Okay. Is
that okay?
Well, be nice, then. Well, I mean, unless you make me mad, then I'm just going to hang up on you.
No, well, I understand that could happen, and I leave open that possibility, but hopefully I won't make you angry.
Yeah, you will not like me when I'm angry.
You would not like me. Imagine. What would you do if I tried to fight you? Would you just push your arm out on my head and just hold me and just say, calm down, little fella?
Yeah, I'm a de-escalator, man.
Right. Well, speaking of which, January 6th was one of the worst days of your life, and it's the 3rd anniversary, and about on the 3rd anniversary, you've announced that you are running for Congress now. You've retired as a Capitol Police. Resigned. What's the difference?
I didn't get a full pension. I 4 years. I stopped 4 years short of being able to collect a full pension. I need 20 years of government service, and I just completed my 15th. So I was in year 16, just starting year 16.
Why did you make this decision, being 4 years away from that sweet pension?
I tell you what, man. I honestly, I don't think we have the luxury of waiting around anymore. I know we're all funny, but this is a really serious ass moment that we're in right now. And, being able, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say we're one election away from the extinction of democracy as we know it, and I don't think we have the luxury of sitting back and waiting and seeing how it plays out. We need good people in Congress. Hell, all elected positions. We need good people that believe in democracy, that believe in the Constitution, and that don't mind putting our country above self, country above party.
Well, for 15 years or however many you've been there, you've been protecting these men and women serving in Congress and their staffs and so on. Did you ever think I could do that? I should do that?
Yeah, man. I have my whole life. Obviously my whole adult life, at least, I've been, dedicated it to public service. Majority of my adult life, I'm dedicated to public service. So if you would have asked me before January 6th happened, would I run for Congress? The answer would be maybe. Yeah, when I retire. And, at the age of 55, 57, but January 6th did happen, and it kind of sped up the timeline a little bit. I'm 40 years old.
How much of this is like the Democratic Party comes to you and says, hey, would you consider? How much of it is you saying, I'd like to do it, and bringing all your friends in to help you?
Zero. None of it asked me about coming. Nobody has asked me to.
Because it's kind of, there's a lot of people running in this Democratic primary, is my understanding.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, it absolutely is.
So they're not they don't put their finger on the scale or something. They don't coronate anybody. Nah. It's an open primary, and you're running against a lot of other people. Do you think you can win?
Yeah, I do think I can win. I refer to this time period that we're in right now as this moment that we're in, this time in country. And my moment right now, I do believe that I am the best person for the job. No disrespect to any other candidates at all, but I've already shown my willingness and my ability to stand up and fight against Trump and push back against individuals while still holding precious democracy. Because there's been, after January 6th, it's a lot of members of Congress that I had to protect that I totally disagreed with, flat out, blatantly told lies about what happened that day and downplayed the violence that me and my coworkers experienced that day. So I've shown my ability to be able to do that. And I feel like I've done that with one arm tied behind my back because I was a member of the Capitol Police and I couldn't speak out against those members. But I still feel like I was effective at doing whatever the hell you want to call I was doing, not letting people forget, seeking out accountability for the individuals who were responsible for that day.
How much of you wanting to run is about that day and the injustice and wanting to make it right? How much of it is about other issues in Maryland's 3rd District or things that you've thought or care about for you, your family, or anything else?
That day, I think, propelled me to this moment. Like I said, a lot of the people in Congress right now and the people running are career politicians. A member of Congress is what? A public servant. And I've been a professional public servant, like I said, for the last 15, 16 years of my life. And, I've always had the desire and drive to be a public servant. So I think that's where the drive comes from. I think that where we're at now, like I said, in this moment, it's kind of like it propelled me to it. Like I said, it's a lot of other issues. Talk about a woman's right to choose or voting rights being stripped away from the Republican side or common sense gun reform. All of those issues, though, I think they all fall under the umbrella of democracy because, what happens if, a guy who says he wants to be dictator for a day does get in and he's against all of those things that I just said. He gets in and he just says, you know what? This is the law. And what are we going to do? His subordinates in Congress support him. So I think all of those issues fall under the umbrella of democracy. I mean, I align with my values and principles. I align a lot with the Democrats. Not, I want to carve out my own identity, but generally speaking, I align with a lot of their core values and principles.
Is there a link to put in for people to donate? Okay, I'll get that and I'll put it in the show notes if it's not easy to say right now. But
no, it's Harry Dunn for Congress, FOR Congress, Harry Dunn for Congress.
There you go, Harry Dunn for Congress. Go send him money. These campaigns, they cost a lot of money. The primary is May 14th? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'll tell you what, I don't know. The thing I'm learning about being a politician, I guess, is it does cost money. And I do need some help with that. So,
well, you've been. Let me just ask you. Nobody's as popular as you that's running. Just tell us, share with us your last 48 hours, and then I'll let you go. You announced on Friday morning on Morning Joe, and how many interviews have you done, and how many places have you been over the last over the weekend?
I have lost count, but I have not put down the phone yet. And you know what? I just want to connect with the voters. I want to connect with the American people, the people of the 3rd District of Maryland, man. I just want to connect with them. Like I said, this ain't I don't want it to be a popularity contest. I want it to be, hey, this person is the right person for the job. I can appreciate all people will say celebrity of who I am, but dude, I'm just a regular public servant, man. I love this country and I'm disappointed in the individuals that are trying to run it in the way that they are. So I think we need good people like myself. And also keep this in mind, a lot of individuals are leaving Congress.
Yeah.
A lot. I don't know what the record is, but it's a lot of people leaving Congress, and we need to replace them with people who actually will put the Constitution above the party and above their self.
Well, we're friends now, but if you get elected, are we not? Can I come to your office in Congress? Can I come to your congressional office? And are you not even going to return my calls? You're not even probably going to return my calls once you become
as long as you have a handler with you, dude. As long as you have a handler, you're always welcome, dude.
As long as there's someone to handle me.
Yes, you're always welcome.
Congressman Harry Dunn, it's me, Pete Dominic. Who?
Who's with you?
Where's your handler? Thank you very much for including me in your initial assault of media. You know you always have a place here. We're rooting for you, and I really appreciate you, my friend. Congrats.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Bud. Bye.
Later.
All right, there you go. How about it? Harry Dunn for Congress. Go donate now. There's a link to it in today's show notes, and hopefully I'll get him to stop by the Hangout this Thursday, so don't miss this Thursday's Hangout because I'm pretty sure I'll be able to get him to pop in for a few minutes. Who else would you like to hear from this Thursday? Send the ideas in now. All right, Maura Quint is now joining us. Always excited when she joins us to kick off the week, and we sometimes have personal conversations. The conversation delves into the personal about her life and my life as well. We're very good friends off the air, privately as well as publicly. We talk about stuff, and she lives out in Pennsylvania. We've only met one time, actually, in person, but I always love talking to her, and it gets very personal in today's conversation, and I thought it was raw and honest and awesome and helpful because I feel like Maura puts feelings and ideas that many of us experience and share into words and language that is helpful and applicable to name some of the feelings that we're having. I share, of course, some of mine as well. We got to a lot, and I love this conversation, and I love Maura, and I hope you do too. Go follow her on all the social medias. Go let her know that you heard her here, and let's do it right now. Maura Mondays, Maura Quint. Now say it.
Huzzah.
I love that. Maura Quint is back, and last time we talked to you, you were a year younger. You celebrated a birthday, and you went through Taint Week. How did it all go? How did that end of 2023 treat you?
Did that happen? I don't even remember. Aren't we like midway through 2024 now?
Well, that week it freezes. I believe it slows down. It all becomes one day, that time period.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened. I've not, it rained. I remember that because I remember thinking I would take my kids and try and go skiing, and hasn't happened because we don't get snow anymore at that time. So yeah, I remember rain. I remember depression. Sure.
That's a normal condition of any Taint Week, much less, any other day. But certainly you see a lot of that at the end of the year, headed into new.
Yeah. I did lots of let's look into antidepressants. That was a lot of that occupied my.
Oh, you were looking at maybe trying some medications, perhaps.
Yeah. I got so low that I was like, oh, maybe I need pharmaceutical help. I mean, the kind that I can get at a pharmacy. I was very open to trying the other kinds too, but no one ever has any for me. So
you mean the difference between an over-the-counter antidepressant versus a magic mushroom?
Correct.
Right.
That is correct.
Have you done any kind of antidepressant, anti-anxiety drugs? Have you used them in the past at any point in your life?
So I had one stint of being on an antidepressant, I want to say 5 years ago, and I was probably on it for a year or so, maybe a little less than a year. And it was helpful. It was a really tough time for me. I was going through a really difficult circumstance, and I just felt terrified all the time. And so, it was funny actually, because I was seeing a therapist, and she was like, I can't prescribe you, but go to your doctor and they can prescribe a medication for you. But I didn't have a doctor because we live in a, healthcare hellscape. So I had to find a doctor, and they were like, well, we need to see you for a little bit before we can prescribe you anything. Right. And I went in to have the first meeting and physical and all that stuff so that they could get to know me, I guess, to make sure I wasn't trying to scam the system to make my brain better or something. I don't know. But I went in, and she's like, okay, the doctor came in. She's like, we're going to do a physical. And I was like, she was like, so why are you here today? And I was like, because I need an antidepressant. And then I just started bawling, and I couldn't stop crying. And she eventually was like, okay, let's just schedule a physical for you later. How about I just prescribe you an antidepressant?
Oh,
and
so
I was like,
that's
okay.
Wow, that seems wildly unethical.
I mean, I think she recognized that I was not, running some sort of scam. This was legitimately a person whose mental health was not well and needed.
So your plan worked. If I go in there and I cry really hard,
just cry. You have to cry intensely. Like, but you have to do the thing where you're trying not to cry, right? Like you have to be in that state where you're like, you're trying so
That's
hard.
That's tough for a lot of people to act that out.
Present. No, it's a lot. It's not just crying. Like it's not just, oh, can you cry on cue? There's more to it.
Sure.
Pete. Don't dismiss this out of hand.
Yeah,
this is some intense work.
This person realized it was authentic and you were in need of help. And how long did you use the antidepressant you were prescribed?
Like 9 months to a year, I'd say.
And then you stopped.
I stopped because I ran out of the refills and I would have had to go back to the doctor to get another refill. And that seemed daunting. So I just stopped using them, which actually was fine. It got me through the period of time that I needed to, because that was the really bad bit. And for me, the antidepressant worked to just sort of clear my vision a little bit so that I could move myself forward, because I was really stuck. And so it just helped me kind of okay, it was kind of a little bit like someone dimly turning on a light and you're like, okay, things are still difficult, but I can navigate this space right now and get myself through this period of time. So that worked.
I like the way that you explained that. That helps me understand it. I've still not ever, I don't know that I have no idea. Everybody's on a spectrum, right? Everybody, just how we use these words. I always feel like we need more and better words to describe how we're feeling, especially depending on who we're talking to, right? Like you and I know each other really well and kind of know ups and downs and moods and what's going on in our lives. But for someone you might not know as well, that you might, be vulnerable enough to say, I'm not doing great. But what exactly does that mean? Am I paralyzed with fear and angst and concern to the point that my body is shaking, which I once got to after I lost my job? Or, am I not able to focus, do my work, take care of my responsibilities? And then if you can have something, create some space, some clarity that you can.
Sorry.
Well, I'm just trying to think of how that you can perform your responsibilities, from parenting to cleaning your house, yourself. I feel like we all don't use the same language. We need better words, but I'm not sure.
Well, it's tricky because I don't know how we would really effectively create a shared language that truly.
Exactly right.
Because, I mean.
Can't do it.
Yeah, I think part of it, too, is because, there's different types of sadness and depression and all of it, however you want to look at it. And there's kind where it's it has nothing, it is purely within your brain. There's just a chemical element. It has nothing to do with the external factors. That I think that's where we think depression, right? It's not coming from anywhere. It's just my brain is doing this thing right now. There's also, situational depressions.
Yeah, I use the word circumstantial. I think it's similar, situational, circumstantial.
And then there's sort of this in-betweenish place where your brain is kind of wired to do that, go into its own dark space, but it doesn't all the time. But it can be sparked by situational, where you respond, I think, more strongly and more persistently than maybe somebody else would. So it's a part of your brain gets kind of flicked on by the circumstance. And I think that's kind of the area that I think that's where I can tend to fall sometimes. Although, who knows? I also think it changes throughout one's life, and it is very confusing. But actually, I was just hanging out with a friend this morning, and she and I were talking about stuff. And she is, I think she's about to turn 50, and she just started seeing a therapist for the first time. And and she was talking about the therapist really wanted to dig into a bunch of her childhood stuff. And she was really, she's really tried to not engage that in her life. And she was trying to communicate it to me, and we know each other, but she was I didn't want to go into all that. And she paused and she's I don't want to use the word trauma, but I don't know what other word there is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was you can use the word trauma because it is a trauma to you. And I know that you're not talking about a childhood where you were locked in a basement and and hit and left without food, or these things that are really extreme that we think of when we think of trauma. I know that's not what you were referring to.
Right.
You're talking about an emotional experience that you went through, but it still has had a traumatic effect on you. And that, that is a fair word to use, but it's tricky because, of course, that means such a such a vast spectrum of things.
You were lied to for a period of years by someone you cared about, or trust was broken, money was stolen from you, your retirement was lost, or even got scammed. Like, there's a lot of different ways to talk about traumatic experiences that have happened. Anytime you're talking about your friend being 50, it could have been a few years ago, it could have been several years ago, but sometimes even a bad breakup could stay with you. So it makes it hard, say, have a future healthy relationship. But those are, it sounds like some examples of the type of traumas that you're talking that you can get some help for, maybe.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, with her, I mean, it and the conversations we were having, I mean, it's childhood, it's like emotional neglect, if not physical neglect, but it is hard sometimes. I think there's a lot of us who maybe experienced a lot of sort of emotional neglect or even sometimes emotional abuse who feel a little bit uncomfortable moving into those words because we're so aware of people who it's very straightforward. They got hit, right? Like
had it worse. Anybody who had it worse makes us hesitant to use this language because we don't want to categorize. We don't have stolen valor of some sort of a type of.
And I think that like also it can take a long time for us to even like categorize what we experienced, because then of course, even when we talk like emotional abuse things, it's like, well, no one was waking me up saying, you fucking ugly pig. Like, it wasn't like that kind of a really direct verbal abuse or even neglect. Like, so when we start looking into the shades, it does. I think for a lot of us feel like, oh God, I'm appropriating someone else's pain. And it's not fair of me. But at the same time, I had a long ago ex who really like put me in my place once and just said everyone's pain is real to them. And that like stuck with me because I was in a sort of place of like, why are they complaining about blah, blah, blah? It's not so bad. But it's exactly that. Like everyone's experience is whatever it is to them. So, if they feel pain, then that is a real pain. That's, all there is to it. There's no like calculating or degrees or trying to like quantify or put people comparatively. Like, what is the point? There's no point in saying, well, my pain is more than your pain. No, if you have pain, then you have pain. And that is fair and valid and true. And, there's no reason for us to quantify or dismiss it, even to ourselves, which I think a lot of us try to do to ourselves.
I love that. I think that's really well said. Everybody's pain is real to them. It's relative to them. And I think that a lot of us are finding, certainly in middle age, new sources of concern and pain and sadness and frustration and failure and purpose and loneliness and lack of all kinds of different things. And many of us don't have the type of skill sets required to negotiate these experiences because a lot of it's new to us. Yeah. And I think that that's a super important thing to stop wherever you are in your life and go, my pain is real to me. And it's also, in my case, it's been new to me. And I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? I never had this before. And I'm looking around and, in my case, I'm always asking for help and searching and I'm finding solutions and have been. But I think people often don't stop and realize, oh, this is new for me. I haven't been here. My knee has never hurt, so I could always run and deal with my stress. Well, now what am I going to do? And that's when you pick up boxing.
I thought you were going to say heroin, but yeah, boxing too. Sure. That would work.
Depends on how bad the knee is. You don't want to twist it.
There's like a, little fast food nuggety, like calendar a day kind of wisdom sentence that I also,
I eat them up.
Me every time I come across it. It's one where like, if you're thinking about your parents, there's this sort of one line of, be kind to your parents. It's their first time being alive too.
Yes.
And like, every time I see that, every time I come across it, I'm like, it devastates me every time.
Why?
Like,
Unpack that just for in case anybody missed it.
It is just that idea of like, none of us know what we're doing. And it's exactly as you said, like, as we get older, I think we think that like, we're going to get to a place where we've figured it out, except that every sort of next step in our journey as humans brings new things and new struggles and new emotional things we have to unlock and new factors that we're responding to. And so we're going through it, but like, so are our parents, so are people older than us. They are still experiencing new stimuli and things that they are grappling with and dealing with, and they're doing it the best they can. And it is not easy. And that's so frustrating. When does it get easy to be alive? I keep thinking like, come on, going to, but then it never does. Sucks.
Well, there are moments of clarity. There are moments of joy, and it depends, I suppose, on how you measure it and how you look at it. That's, I think, part of my frustration is that I have felt like a lot of my life, it has been easy to be alive, that I've enjoyed it, that I've been generally happy. And so in the setbacks that I've had, I've struggled around that. And
you're like the prom kid coming into the like real world. You're just like, what are you guys talking about? High school was great.
And we've talked about this before. I mean, I'm certainly not alone. There's a whole bunch of 40 and 50-year-old white men, especially, who had a pretty good ride. You know, we had our parents had good jobs, grew up in the 80s. It was pretty good. Went to college, had a pretty good job, had a good career. And all of a sudden things start to fall apart, as Pema Chodron so brilliantly writes. And everybody should read that book, because if they haven't, they will. You know, your parents pass away, or you're taking care of them, or you're aging, and all these things. You don't necessarily have the modalities because you were the captain of a lacrosse team. In my case, I was on the bench, and that was something I had to overcome in life. But I was still on the team. Like
you knew hardship.
I knew some hardship, and I knew the hardness of the pine that made up the bench really well on my ass, for sure.
I understand that.
That was my struggle. That was my struggle, being on the bench, being a little guy. That was my hard thing to overcome. And I did. You
did.
Sure.
You absolutely did.
I interviewed
Are you sitting
John
on a bench
Lewis.
now? What are you sitting on?
I've said this too many times, but it's a great moment in therapy when I was kind of talking about this issue in my life and always feeling like I was still on the bench in life. And my therapist goes, "You interviewed John Lewis yesterday. You're off the bench." And I was like, like whatever metric mattered in my career, certainly interviewing a civil rights hero who I admired so much was a pretty good measure of success, I suppose. But I think people have to have those moments in their lives.
Congrats, Pete, with all of your success.
So when it comes,
continue being a prom king.
Well, when it comes undone, the point is you're lost because you're the prom king, and now you're like, maybe you're drinking whiskey and you got a pistol in your hand. I mean, that's a lot.
That was dark. Okay.
I went all the way because I think that's the true thing. I think there's a lot of prom kings, a lot of people, you know, who have a lot of success that when they come up against adversity at a certain point in their age, kind of for the first time, it's real. I need
to show you. I'm sitting here at a desk and I have this, like, it's my kids' space as well. And their glasses holder is right here. And it's just the saddest looking puppy. And so I just looked over when you said like whiskey and a gun to this like sad looking, like, oh, don't do it, Pete. Don't do it. That's what I saw.
That's the voice that little puppy has. You couldn't have.
No, I couldn't have. What are you going to say? No,
I don't know. I don't know.
Hey, I'll do voices, but you know, you pay me double. That's a different rate.
Well, this is always a really important conversation, and it's really obviously both of you and I shared a lot there, and I appreciate that you do with me here. And it's always helpful to people to hear those types of conversations. So thank you very much, and we'll be charting your progress, your personal
yes, please do check in
progress in 2024. Do you have any like even nebulous goals, concrete goals, anything you want to accomplish this year at all? Do you do that at all? Do you think about that in general? Doesn't have to be at the
My problem is I think about it all the time. Mm-hmm. So it's like I think I used to sort of do resolutions, but I just can't peg them to that anymore because I'm in such a constant state of like, I want to do this over this period of time. It's always in my head and I'm always failing. And so it's just like this year in particular, I was like, no, I'm not gonna arrange for future me to feel bad about myself. Like
That's great. That's smart.
I want to spare future self that sense of like, wow, can't even fucking do. Like, no, I'm not going through that. There's tons that I would like to do. I will do them if I can. If I can't, that's okay. Like, I'm trying to exist much more in that sort of space because I don't need extra time to be like, let me think through what I know. It's all I think about. So.
I love the reality of that. And I think that the underlying truth of it also is probably actually an emotionally healthy choice, which is whether you're choosing it or not. It is to be mindful and to not, live in the past or in the present. And it's a easier way to maintain a sense of stasis, much less happiness, normalcy, to not spin out, is to stay right there in the moment, not knowing what might happen tomorrow. Maybe you meet someone that's real special. Maybe you drive into a tree. Hold the dog up. Hold the dog up.
It's
Feel so much better now.
But I'm special. Why would you meet someone else? Don't you love me?
I wish people have to edit the video now. Oh, it's getting bigger and closer to the camera. The dog is. I really feel like it's going to blink at me. It has tears welled up in its eyes. It's
it really
just
does.
wonderful.
It does have tears welled up in its eyes. No, I mean, I live in a constant state of like feeling bad, and I'm trying. If anything, I'm trying to stop beating myself up so much for my failures or my perceived failures, because I definitely have an internal voice that is highly critical of myself all the time. So, if anything, I'm trying to shut that stupid voice up, but it is hard because it does not like that.
It's a wolf on your shoulder. It's barking. Does it bark a lot at you? What is it like?
I would classify it less as like a barking animal and more as sort of a very angry, like headmistress, like a sort of like, it's someone who is constantly berating and belittling and looking at me as though I am absolutely just a pathetic failure.
Do you visualize that headmistress or see or hear her? Or is that just...
I there are times when I actually verbalize this stuff to myself.
Huh.
Certainly. Like I sort of almost can't keep it in. There are times when I know you're supposed to look in the mirror and like do affirmations, right? You're supposed to be like, okay, I see myself. I am strong. I am capable. I am smart. You're supposed to do those things, right? But I've tried, but it like so quick goes to, I am a fucking fail. Like it's just so instantly like hateful towards myself. But that's
how much have you? I mean, I know that you've read and looked at all kinds of different ways to deal with this, to cope with these feelings, but there just seems to be so much really interesting now written about the idea of compassion, and everybody's talking about and unpacking that idea. And so that whatever that voice looks like, we all have it to some extent. It sounds like yours is a real, what.
Yeah, no, she's a cunt.
I didn't say that you said it, but
I did.
But how much have you read or looked into that idea that there seems to be, there's entire meditations that deal with just compassion for yourself, much less others.
No, I know. I've certainly
you've done it all. You've seen it all. There's no new.
I have, and I fail at it because I suck at that too. No, it's like another place that I'm not able to do it well enough. I mean, and the amount of times, it's fascinating to me, actually. I'm sorry, not to use this as just my therapy, but... No,
I like it. I think everybody deals with this to some extent.
Let's use this as my therapy.
Let's go.
No, the amount of times people have said to me, I wish you'd be as kind to yourself as you were to others. I've heard that so many times from so many people, and including therapists, and I try so hard to hold on to that, but I really struggle. And I think, and this is actually a conversation I was having with a different friend recently, I think the root of it actually is utter ego. I actually think it's no, but I fundamentally, some part of me thinks, yeah, but I should be better than other people. It's actually a self-aggrandizement, actually, that I'm kind of no, yes, but other people are going to struggle. I shouldn't, though. I should be somehow better than the rest of humanity, which is insane. And what a self-aggrandizing sort of statement to hold within your head. How ridiculous.
Is that a new conclusion you've arrived at, or have you always kind of seen that ego play that you say is at the root? Is that a new?
I think I've probably seen it, but I don't know that I've named it until recently. Yeah.
I find that your personality type, I can see sometimes that being a natural occurrence. People that have a certain, in my opinion, type of intelligence and brilliance and wit and wisdom, and then you see anybody else who has less than that, quote, doing better, if I were to simplify it to those terms. You're how is that happening? I've always honestly felt like I was more mediocre and maybe hitting above my weight. I've felt that in a different way. I think it's the same side of two coins in a way, but I wonder if it has if there's something that resonates there with you about people that have
Yeah, it's not that I certainly I don't actually believe that I'm better than people, but I think it's more actually
I
that
actually do, though. I believe you're better than a lot of people.
Well, no, I think that internally what I think really what I struggle with is that I don't feel like I have limitations that other people have. That, you know, and I do, obviously I have plenty of limitations. I can't, you know, there's plenty I cannot do. But I think that I think, you know, again, you're just going full therapy. Let's talk about my mom. So, but for real, my mother clearly has a learning disability. And I think I watched her struggle with taking in information and I went, oh, I don't have that same struggle. It is easy for me to take in information. If you give me verbal directions right now, I'm going to process that information a lot quicker than she is. And I think there's an element of like having seen that sort of thing my whole life where I went, okay, well, I don't have the same limitation she does. So everything should be easy. Like I should be able to do all these things. I know why she can't. That's fair. She's struggling and she's working so hard. I don't have to work as hard. So like I should be able to do all these things. Like there's something like that. And therefore, if I'm not achieving them, but I have the capacity to, well, then that's laziness. That's an inherent flaw that
you pinned yourself in.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not great.
That's fascinating. It's not great. That's really, really interesting how much you've really have gotten the root of it. When I say that you're better than other people, I mean, like there are measures for which you, for example, gained a grassroots following on a social media platform when it was as kind of free market growth and as pure as it ever could have been, Twitter. And you're writing when you write, for example, your debate recaps, like they're as good as anybody's writing, humor wise. And, you know, comedy writers all know how good you are. And that's what I mean. Like you're very good at that. But there are obviously people who are the greatest singers, writers, artists in the world who don't necessarily have the quote career success or writing jobs or whatever that people who are far better than them do. I mean, that's just for a million reasons why that is. But that was kind of like one of the metrics I was talking about with you in terms of just being a great writer.
That stuff's interesting because that stuff I don't have any confidence in. I don't look at my, like, I don't go, oh, I'm talented, but I do look at other people and think that they are talented. I think, again, I mean, I bet if I practiced, I bet if I worked hard, maybe I could, you know, slowly build to that level of talent, right? Because there's nothing holding me back. So I should be doing more and I should be like practicing a craft and really perfecting it and becoming, you know, sort of an artist.
Well, if that were your ambition, I mean, I think what you're saying when I think we should all be careful, as I'm hearing you would definitely are always correcting my language, but like work hard, like you work hard, you do about a billion things. And so I don't know that it's about a work ethic per se on your part.
I mean, look, that's fair, but that's another thing I struggle with because I do feel like I do have an inherent sense of like, I don't work hard enough. I am lazy. I absolutely and that's, you know, that's goddamn Puritanism. That's like upbringing. That's cultural. That's bootstraps. It's all of the stuff that got in from a very early age and was reinforced both within my family and within, you know, society as a whole. There's an absolute like crazy amount of, if you're not accomplishing and achieving, it's because you're not working hard enough. And if you're not working hard enough, it's because you lack like drive, motivation, you know, you're failing, right?
Well, you're talking about
that's the sense. That's
the way our culture is set up to make you feel badly if you're not productive and working hard and being.
Yeah, the productivity trap. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I really do struggle with that. And there are times when I like pause and I like look at the things I've done or I'm doing and I'm like, okay. And I want very badly to like run it through a metric I want something to spit out and tell me, yes, you're doing enough or no, you're not. Like, I don't feel like I have internal clarity.
That would infer that there's a metric that would apply.
Yes, right. And there's not. I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, I want this imaginary validation from something to say, yes, you're
have you ever heard of
enough.
A fucking time clock? Why don't you punch a card, for Christ's sake? See how much work you get done.
Having a job.
Well, like the idea of punching, like I think we punched the wrong card. I mean, like the card for work versus the card for pleasure versus the card for like sitting and reading by a fire or going on a hike or helping a friend move. Which I was recently asked to do, but then.
Did you do it?
No, he was like, we don't need you anymore. I was like, I was really feeling like I was going to be.
They benched you. Oh, Pete, I'm sorry.
You are evil. I would have never done that to you.
I know, but you looked happy, so I felt like you needed it. I'm clearly pouring out my heart. I obviously just need compassion and kindness.
God,
you need to be leveled a little bit more.
I can't believe I gave you that simple mallet to pound me with for the rest of our friendship.
Yeah, that is what's going to happen. We both
Get off
see
the
it.
bench, loser. There's going to be so many jokes. And now I may have to edit that out because the entire audience, no, they're more sensitive than you. They would never bring me back
I believe that. Your audience is very nice in ways that
they would never say such a thing. Would you guys? I think they might. It's okay. I'm off it. You can't break me. I wonder, though, in conclusion on this personal conversation, I know we've talked about this. We've touched on it. It's hard to know what we taped and shared and what we've talked about privately, but about like having a practice. Because you talk a lot about, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's linear. Every day can be this much of a struggle or not. And things change and there's an ebb and a flow and, everything is impermanent and you're on a river, always moving. We understand that, or maybe we don't. I've learned that recently more, but I feel like for that reason, whatever you learn in therapy, whatever solutions, whatever is working for you to navigate life, it helps to come back and remind yourself of it every day, which includes meditating, journaling, things like that are a thing you do pretty consistently, if not every day, to get back to reminding yourself of how you're going to negotiate whatever comes today.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with like any kind of daily practice of any sort?
I can shower every day. I'm pretty good at that.
Ironically, that's, as my audience knows, not my forte.
I'm pretty good at that. I brush my teeth very consistently.
You never miss, like you'll never go to bed. You've been drinking, you're out. I don't know.
Okay. When I say I brush my teeth very consistently, I mean every morning.
Go ahead.
Okay. Absolutely every morning. I mean, the other times a day, those happen sometimes, but okay. But I'm speaking very consistently. Every single morning do I shower and brush my teeth. Those things happen. Beyond that, I struggle with consistency in my life. And it is, I'm trying to figure out how to do anything on a consistent basis, but I've never been any good at it. And even down to my ex-husband, he's like a very regimented person. And, and he had when I met him, he had, the thing he eats on Mondays, the thing he eats on Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. That's how he lived his life. And to me, that's I don't know how people do that. That's crazy to me. I do not thrive under that level of structure. But I also envy it. It seems amazing to me. That's
that's weird because I'm actually you articulated and described a lot about how I feel and how I am in a way I haven't quite been able to. I too share that lack of consistency and that anxiety, and Val is like that. She's regimented. Yeah. She's very, very consistent at all the things that are adulting, you could say. And I'm not. And it makes me, and like you said, I admire it and wish I could be better.
Yeah.
And I have some shame around it. I mean, I told her that the other day. I go, I have a shame around the messes that I make. I want you to understand, I am not okay with it. I've never been okay with it. It brings me shame, and I'm constantly trying to be better, which is why I incessantly talk about how much I clean my garage or my shed. It makes me feel better that I've cleaned up a mess that I probably created to begin with. But still, the meditation practice, to me, it's not every single day, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. But that's the one thing I am trying to keep consistent. And writing too, although I haven't as much the past couple of days, to be fair. But those things to me, and then the rest of it, who knows what's going to happen. I'm going to definitely put out a podcast today. But
yeah, I mean, that takes a tremendous amount of consistency and motivation.
Yeah, but that's my job. I go to work and I do that. I feel like it's harder self-employed, I think, for people.
Right. That's what I mean. No one's yelling at you if you don't. And that takes a lot of internal drive, which I also find incredibly impressive and wish I had a bit more access to.
I'm motivated by the responsibility I have to support like the girls, you know, like that. I can't not do it. I feel like that's
fair.
Easy for me. I think I love what I do and I think I work hard, but for me, it's always been that I kind of have to do this. It's like,
right.
Almost that simple to me. The frustration is when it doesn't go as well as you want it to, obviously, but I feel like I definitely put in the work. I know that, but I have to.
That's fair.
I have to. What am I supposed to do? What are they going to do? It would be a lot of shame if I wasn't able to support them financially.
No. I mean, like, doing things for my kids motivates me to a lot. Like, that is it is probably the one factor that really does make me move in some way. Like, even just in a really basic way, even just in a, like, I'm just in a place of like not being able to handle the day. There have been even moments where, you know, my kids have gone to bed. I'm exhausted. I'm like past it. And I'm looking around and the kitchen is trashed. And if they weren't here, they were with their dads, I would just go to bed and I'd deal with it another time. But there are moments where I'm just like, how would you have felt if as a kid you got up and you lived in a house?
That's interesting.
Like, and it that sort of thing like helps me sometimes to be like, all right, yeah, I need to make the kitchen, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I need it to be in order and feel okay so that when they come down, they feel a safety in their space. But that is the only thing that will make me do that.
So when they're gone.
Yeah, then it's like, it's interesting. Then, well, it's, you know what's weird actually? When they're gone, I clean like crazy because no one else is sort of messing it up, but I do it entirely in a haphazard way. Like even, you know, this morning I went to brunch. She said she'd be there in 5 minutes. She didn't come for a half an hour to come pick me up. I like deep clean the kitchen in that time. Like I probably wouldn't have gotten to that otherwise, but like I do it in these weird little fits. There's no structure to it. It's like, oh, I noticed something on the floor. Let me vacuum the whole house. Like, just in that moment, as opposed to like the sort of people who. Yeah, no,
Val, on Saturday mornings, I walk into our bathroom that Julia and I share upstairs, just she and I upstairs, and I walk in and it smells like I'm like, oh, thank you for cleaning. She cleans it Saturday mornings, pretty much every Saturday morning.
Right. I've never been able to do that. And I'm fascinated.
I've never cleaned my bathroom.
I believe you. It's an interesting thing to me because that used to mean that I lived in a lot more chaos. And now I have a handle on the chaos. Like I don't live in chaos because I need to not. But I also have been able to lean in on like, yeah, but I also can't live in structure. So what I need to do is when things occur to me, I need to do them then. Whereas I usually would be like, oh, I won't have time. But now it's kind of like, no, you know what? You're thinking about this and you have 5 minutes. See how much you can do in those 5 minutes because you're thinking about it now. And here's where I've actually viscerally noticed the progression in my life and the difference. I have a couple of plants and they're alive and they have been alive for 1.5 years, 2 years. I have never kept a plant alive before in my life because you have to regularly water plants. I can't keep it to a schedule. They would just always die because then I'd like forget and then I'd overwater and then I wouldn't. And now it's like, I still can't keep it to a structure. But when I notice the plants, I pause and I go, when's the last time? Was it a day ago or 2 days ago? And then I instantly go and water them.
Well, it sounds like you're overwatering them for every 2 days. For Christ's sake. What kind of plants? What do you live in a rainforest?
I don't know, but they're alive.
So when I say to you, I understand that that's progress for you, and I'm sorry I'm making a joke, but no, but like when I say to you, because this is really, I'm really interested in what you're saying because I feel like you're describing a lot of the way I feel, and I'm sure there's others out there that can relate to this. But when I say to you, why don't you just water the plants every Sunday morning? What does that make you? How does that make you feel? Like you think I would not? What are the emotions like that regularity brings up? That structure that you're so opposed to, that I'm so opposed to, but I can't describe why.
So I think part of it is just because I think it's because when it comes down to it, I am actually not interested in living a life that ordered. And what I mean by that is like other people, the people I know who have a very structured life, they then fit other things into it. They see it sort of as like a puzzle and it's like, oh, okay, you want to have dinner. I want to see my friend for dinner on a Tuesday night. Okay, now I will remove this piece of the puzzle and I'll put this one in. And it sort of fits in, right? I feel very much like my needs and moods and whims like change, like there are days I wake up and I'm like, I really want to do stuff. And there are days I wake up and I'm like, I can't, I'm out of energy for these types of areas. And when I have a structure, like if I'm every Sunday morning, I have to, the plants is an easy one, but let's say, but like every Sunday morning I have to do this. There's some Sunday mornings I'll wake up and I'm like, yeah, I felt good. I'm going to do these things that are, this is part of my schedule. And then there's going to be another Sunday where I go, I can't, I need to stay in bed. I don't have the emotional or physical capacity to do this. And then when I realize, but you just missed a couple of pieces of the puzzle. You were supposed to do those things at that time. Yeah. What that triggers in me is like so much stress and anxiety and self-hatred that it starts to affect other things. And it's like, well, but now I can't do anything until I do that thing. And I can't do that. I haven't done that thing yet. And now look, I'm already failing. And it starts to spiral me out. And because I know that like that my ability is not going to be consistent. I know that I'm dealing with a person who does not have a consistent ability every single day to do the same sort of thing. Some days I'll have way more ability and some days I'll have way less. Yeah. I have to be more adaptive to myself. And if I allow that, if I allow that, like, you know what, today I had an hour in me, like I had 2 hours in me. That's what I had. And then, whatever else that I'm dealing with took over, and that's okay. Then it doesn't start that same cycle, of like hatred. And then it's like, okay, well, all right, that's fine. Tomorrow I'll wake up and maybe I'll think about the plans. Like I kind of have to allow myself to respond. Like I have to be in that river and not fighting it and just kind of going along with it and like, and responding. And
so you can keep your head above water.
Yeah. In order to not like absolutely drown. Yeah.
But some days you drown.
Some days I'm struggling, but now that I'm like a bit more open to the fact that it's going to be fluid, I don't waste all that energy trying to fight against it.
That's really great. That sounds like a real amount of progress. It sounds like you're also just staying more present and not judging, having expectations for what you're going to feel or accomplish today.
That is definitely what I'm trying to do. And it does seem to more positively affect my mental health. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Look at all this. Lots coming out here today, Pete. See, and it was like, what should we talk about today? I don't know. The inner workings of my being. How about that?
I think that conversations like these help people work through and people relate to it. And you come up with language to describe how other people are feeling. I think we're pretty good at that. And I think that your honesty and vulnerability, as well as your intelligence, are like a perfect mix for a conversation to be taped and shared. Like everybody feels like they know you, and me. And I think that that's where hopefully there's a trust and honesty that is why we taped this and shared it with people.
That's very kind. That's nice. All right. I won't use the bench stuff anymore.
Yeah, you
Fine.
will.
Yes, I will. But for a moment, I won't.
Thank you so much. We'll leave it there. It's nice. I want to leave it there. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. I'm going to hit end. I hit stop. There you go. What did you think? Those of you that listened all the way to the end to today's program, it's a long one. The first one I've had a couple guests on in a long time and put a lot into it, including the news segment. So thank you so much, you bumblebees who listened all the way to the end. I'd love to know what you thought of my conversation with Maura. Maybe it touched something that you're dealing with, put a name to something that you're feeling. I certainly hope that's the case. And if not, well, then go F yourself. No, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you appreciating me. Thank you so much. I will talk to you later. Jon Carroll taking us in, takes us out, going to take us to Vegas, March 22nd, 23rd. Hope to see you there. Until tomorrow, I love you. Be well. You got this. Let's go.
Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know us right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. We got to ride. got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to the end of your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and